Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
The purpose of physical experience is to uplift spaces into places. In fact, if you look at a space, it is a composition of its curves and edges, whereas a place is the interaction and engagement that takes place in it. A place conveys a feeling, sets a mood for the people who exist in. And to create a meaningful experience that resonates with the harmony of the setting is something that goes through a series of steps of planning. In fact, it is upon the enthusiasts who strive to give their users an immersive experience. And that's why today we have with us Manukrishna Nair. He started his journey with events and now in defining spaces. He leads as development director at Fitch, where he is responsible for helping organizations redefine their spaces for an immersive experience. He also leads Fitch's design lab at Nestle. He has been an entrepreneur for a long stint in middle of an award-winning design studio. He has worked with brands including Coca-Cola, Axis Bank, CureFit, ACG, and the list goes on. With his wide knowledge from business to design, we thought of taking his views on future proofing with design on our journey of discovering designeering. Thank you so much, Manu, for joining us on Avantika Designeering series. Looking forward to interacting with you today on space design and much more.
Pleasure, Rohit. Thanks for the invite.
So, Manu, one question that has been boggling all of us for last 50 odd days. The post-COVID world is going to look wild. How do you think spaces will look like once we all go in the world after this?
Yeah, it's a good question because a lot of people have already asking us as well. We've started having conversations. We, in fact, recently a client asked, or rather a request on how can we create a virtual experience, right? Which is an interesting thought because we are always been creating a lot of physical experiences and adding virtual as part of it. But if we were to look at a purely a virtual experience for a brand, what would it be like? So this, yes, it's part of conversation now. Brands are getting interested. We're looking at, can it be more immersive and storytelling, or does it just be a tool, right? Because that's typically when you look at two ways of virtual. But beyond just the space, it's also about the experience. Today, we are chatting with another fitness client of ours. Uh, Post everything coming back, when gyms get back to normal, and people want to have limited contact, what can then become points of enhancing the experience? So there is going to be a play, but I think technology would really play a much larger role in making this physical spaces more immersive in the overall experience.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. I definitely think that there are going to be a lot of interesting changes, and excited to understand that. In fact, something which is associated with this. Do you think social distancing in public spaces will become a norm? And if yes, how will we start designing for that?
I think it's a mix of both yes and no. Just about last week, a colleague of ours from China shared pictures from Shanghai, and it looked just like 2019. Everything was normal. People are sitting out at cafes, and we hope that we all come to that kind of a situation as soon as possible. But I think social distancing, what it'll do, at least for us, if we really get down to it, is bring some much needed discipline and behavior change, right? I think culturally, when we interact in public spaces, it's the rush for everything. But can we use design to kind of navigate people better? I think If you look at a, let's say, a metro station, or a sale at a retail store, I think that's going to be an interesting place to uh, use design as a tool for social distancing. We were again chatting with an apparel client. Um, Again, the challenge is, would people like to touch and feel products anymore, right? Uh, will I have the in the back of my mind that, okay, someone has already tested this, tried this, should I even try it anymore? So those are questions that are being asked, and there are no answers or solutions yet. But it's all I would say now a work in progress to try and see what could be the new reality with design.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting discovery out there. And, speaking of all of these spaces, let's move to your story. We tracked your journey from Kaleidoscope to Fitch, from events to space design, or in fact, space design management. We would like to hear about your journey, how it's been from start till now.
So just to kind of say that at Fitch, it's not just space design, right? We are, while we do a lot of work in experience, it's really the overall brand experience. It could be right from shaping the story of the brand, defining the brand, and what the brand will look like, to seeing the experience of the brand, right? So it's space is one part of it, but it's really how do you look at the entire design as a tool for every aspect of the brand's experience. So you said my journey from events. I think if to put it some insight, it's really about being brave in making some career choices, right? Um, it is about saying, okay, if you believe in something, why don't you just do it? Events, I always wanted to be in the creative space, and I felt that at that time everyone was doing advertising. I didn't want to get into advertising, and events was a very upcoming profession. I mean, earlier it was just done by people who knew it, but as a profession it was just about starting, and I thought it was an interesting space to be at. But then I realized it was very tactical in nature, and I felt there's a lot better role for design to play a strategic perspective, and that's why design. Uh, I've put my fingers in different types of design, whether it's product design or graphic and brand design. So it's really, um, I would say, just being brave. If you want to do something, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that's beautifully put together. In fact, I'm sure that as an entrepreneur, also when someone decides to start up, that's a bold and a brave decision. So you were working with
Just to talk about the, sorry to cut you off there, but we were chatting prior to starting this podcast about entrepreneurship and starting things. And I think over there again, being brave is about, it's okay to make to fail, right? Successfully failing is not just a fad; it's a great learning. I think a lot of my learning came from my own startup. Doing different things. It was great recognition, but at the same time, it was about what can you do next after that. So I think going back to being brave, but it's really about, yes, taking some risks, taking some challenges for yourself, and shaping your own career would help.
so you worked in the industry for some time, then you became an entrepreneur and again industry. Why didn't you prolong or continue on the entrepreneurial journey? Why back to corporate?
I mean, after a point at Sapta, my firm was called Sapta, and after a point, the kind of projects that we did hit a plateau. A lot of large projects were going to the firms where I worked after quitting my startup, right? So if there was a large rebranding project, it would never go to a boutique design firm such as ours. It would go to the larger outfits, right? A large retail experience project would never come to a smaller outfit such as ours. So I think we maxed out in terms of the pushing the boundaries, and not really doing really large projects. And but I've been fortunate in the last two firms that I worked with, and both have been part of WPP, to really, even within the framework of a large agency, to be able to do what I would like to do. So I still feel like you can have that startup mentality in a larger firm as well, if that firm allows you to. Yeah. Yeah, but the fundamental thing there was about, if the things that you're doing is not challenging yourself, then you need to see what's next, even if it was in your own startup.
Absolutely. In fact, what's interesting to hear about your views is how these roles have enabled you to understand business so well in the world of design, and that's really interesting. So you've done so much work in translating uh, business objectives into tangible design solutions, and I'm sure that while you do this, there are a lot of ideologies, are crossroads. So how do you solve this situation?
uh, to very put it in almost very simple terms is collaboration. I think if an agency and the client works as an agency and a client, it'll always have issues. The more you collaborate, it's not just one person's problem, right? It's not that, okay, the client has given you the brief, you are the champions of just the best idea, and you come up with some magic and make it happen. That's not how it is. I mean, that may be the old world order of design, but it's really about collaboration. It's about working, pushing the challenge together. And today clients are quite open about it, right? They would like to be part of the brainstorm. They would be like to shape storytelling together. So it's really about, you might have different thought processes and perspectives, but when you look at the common goal, and we align on what we really want to accomplish, then you are able to achieve what you want to achieve. And you keep it as an iterative process. You want to just try it out. You want to make something. You don't want to really perfect it, but you get it out there, test it out, see how it's working. So that's really how it can be made successful. Yeah, sorry, there would always be ideological conflicts, but if you can look at creating a culture of collaboration with the client, I think that's the key.
I think that's interesting. So when you speak about collaboration specifically, one of the things, while we were also talking about your introduction and things that you've done, you also lead Fitch's design lab at Nestle. Can you talk a little more on
So
that
yeah,
collaboration?
we work with a lot of clients as partners, and with Nestle as well. It's been over 8 plus years, 8 to 10 years relationship that Fitch has had. So Fitch has in fact set up a design lab at Nestle where we handle all the packaging for Nestle. So it's our team sitting and handling every
Okay.
packaging that goes out for Nestle. So that really is the lab. So we've coined it the design lab, and it's housed inside the Nestle headquarters.
Interesting. And while Fitch does branding and experience design for a lot of brands. One of the interesting parts that I've known Fitch for is definitely the space design part of it. In fact, I remember year 2007 when Asian Paints launched its color store in Mumbai. It was a fascinating experience to be there, and I then discovered that Fitch was the one which had done the entire thing. So, my question here is that space and exhibitions are seen as interaction and blend between product and graphic design. How do you define space
Well,
design?
space really is about, or rather, space design is really about bringing alive an experience. Just to cite your own example that you just mentioned, the color store, does not sell a single can of paint, right? It is not a store that generates revenue through selling paint. It's a store that helps a brand almost own the category of color, right? Because we wanted Asian Paints, when they approached us, it was all about not just selling another bucket of paint, but really can we own the category. And when you come into the store, you play with color, you play with how, let's say, your Mera Wala pink looks within a warm light versus a cool light, and you really play with color. So whether it's adults, whether it's kids, or mainly the architects who come in there, they're really talking color stories and how they can enhance any kind of a space using color. So it's really about that experience, bringing alive an experience is what space design does.
Interesting. In fact, Fitch has also developed data points to codify different type of experiences, and you've identified 12 distinct experience themes. Can you share a little more on that
Sure.
with us?
So experience themes is our a proprietary tool that we use, and we do use data. So we, being part of WPP, we have access to brand Z data, which is essentially what customers expect out of brands. So this is about 650,000 customers, and we've mapped it over 23,000 brands in more than 30 plus countries, 31 countries in fact. And what we really look at is what are customers expecting from categories, what are customers expecting from brands. And using that data, we've shaped these 12 themes uh, based on different customer needs. Because ultimately, when you think of designing an experience, it is what we really firmly believe, it is about identifying what are those four basic needs of the customer, whether it's the need for progress, the need for independence, the need for belonging, or the need for comfort. And by understanding these need states, we've taken these 12 experience themes. So one could be like, like a campfire. When we talk of campfire, it's a place of belonging where you have people being welcomed, people come together. So within a space, if you really want to create community, we use the campfire experience theme as a, as the central idea around how that journey of the customer would be like. And for us, these 12 themes are not saying that one brand has to have just one theme. It is a mix of two or three themes that really makes it a lot more richer, right? So there could be a theme of lab, which is really about where experiments take place, right? I want to discover something new. So a brand very much in technology and creating innovations, it's really like a lab. So can I bring that lab alive in the space? Fitch recently even designed the Microsoft headquarters in Singapore, and it's about a lakh and 20,000 square feet. And over there, our philosophy was, how do you make the office almost like your brand's flagship? So we really looked at the office space like a brand's flagship, and then how do these experience themes work from the journey of be it the employees, be it visitors or business associates coming into the Microsoft office.
So, Manu, one of the things that I wish to ask here is, while all of this data is helping you, to create some of these themes that can be aligned to a brand, but are we also talking about this getting into a templatization mode? For example, now there are various online tools like Canva, which are templatizing the entire graphic design part of it. So, with these 12 themes, are we also talking about templatization here?
Not at all, not at all. Because no two companies' experience would be the same, right? Because it is really built on the brand's DNA, right? It's a brand experience. It's not just an experience, right? So even if I said campfire or lab, my brand's campfire will be very different from your brand's campfire, right? Uh, we use these themes as a framework to what we call create experience principles, right? Or experience signatures. So these experience signatures are core to a particular brand. No two brands will have the same signature. Now, if I have uh, a studded red wall of a particular brand, that becomes core of that particular brand DNA or that particular brand signature. It's not the same. So it will never be templatized. It is more a framework for making strategic choices and how the brand's experience would be like, but it's not templatized.
Interesting. So, creating fancy and minimal spaces have become a trend of of the current times. Regardless of the kind of space, whether we are talking about classrooms, banks, bus stops, all are becoming sleek, comfortable environment. So, are all spaces, according to you, meant to be this way?
That's a very interesting question. If you look at today's generation, and we are calling this the generation that always looking down, right? Looking down at their device and not looking up, right? Um, how do you the challenge that, and we were identifying some trends, our team, our global team, we've been trying to identify for this generation who's always looking down, what is it at what's at stake for the brick and mortar store, right? How do you get their attention? So we are really saying that utilize the fact that they are using the device. So use their device when they are in the store to make the experience a lot more engaging. Right? That's one way to look at it, where using smart technology, and a lot of brands have started doing this. So Foot Locker, in one of the stores in the US, what you might call it the voice museum of sorts, is where you have, you use your own device, and you're going through each product of, a different shoe, particular product, and through voice you're actually having a sports legend talk about the product. So it's almost like the museum of shoes.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
So it's really how you could use, at which we have this thing of the consumer mind states of dreaming, locating, right? So during these mind states, how do you utilize this technology of this customer looking down and make spaces more efficient? So you don't have to have all the hardware in the space. So yes, you could do spaces with a smaller footprint, but still use technology in a very smart fashion.
So while we are on that, one of the other things that intrigue me is, does nature give any insight into designing spaces? Can we see aspects of biomimicry in
It's
spaces?
there. I mean, there are obviously some people who are specialists in it, and I would urge you to watch. You may be familiar with Abstract, which is a show on Netflix
Yes.
on design. And I don't know if you've seen the episode by Neri Oxman, who's a bioarchitecture, and it's a beautiful episode. But fundamentally, to answer your question, yes, there are examples. I've been to a house recently where using termite mounds as an inspiration. How do you look at a tapered rooftop for natural cooling, or the kind of material you use? So yes, there is biomimicry used in space. Uh, Unfortunately, in commercial spaces, I haven't seen that enough in our country, and I think that's a great opportunity to do it. Like, can you really utilize some of these? You see parts of it, so you might see some part of it in an installation, some part of it in a feature wall, but really, can you design an entire space around it? I think that's a great opportunity in our country to do a lot more.
So for a lot of young designers listening to our show, this is something that you could make a note of. So, Manu, moving from this to the element of business, and designing for business, leads to conflict and ideologies between team members. So, as a leader of a large organization, how do you manage these conflicts? I mean, these could be conflicts with the customer, with the contractors, with so many other stakeholders. So, how vital are these conflicts and difference of differences of opinion to
So
designing?
let me say, from a starting point, when you get typically you get a brief, right, from a client. And what I like to really do is not take the brief as given, right? You encourage, at least I encourage the team members to kind of push the boundaries of the thinking, that can you question why, can you question why not? Because that's really the beauty of good design, that you don't just take the brief as is, because sometimes the client has probably not thought of everything, right? You would like to question and reshape the brief sometimes. So it's good to debate. I mean, it's good to have a constructive conflict of thought, because only then uh, the output will be much better. That's all. That's my fundamental belief, that if you just take in whatever there is and give an output, you're being very prescriptive, and that's not what design is.
Okay, interesting. And solving problems is anyway a designer's primary goal. So I'm sure that I see that alignment there. So moving from there to a new term that I keep stumbling upon, business design. How important is it for designers to understand and design for needs of businesses,
Yeah, that
according
is
to
the
you?
fundamental of design, right? I mean, everyone talks about differentiation between art and design, saying that art is for yourself, business design is for a business, or design is for a commercial output. In a way, right? Because you're designing to solve a challenge, whether it's for a client, whether it's from a customer viewpoint or a business viewpoint. So you can't design only on a whim, right? Gone are the days that you say that, okay, I like really this, and it'll come out and it'll work. No, not necessarily so. We need to see what the context of the customer is, what the context of the business is, sorry, what is the context of the business, and how is the behavior of the customer going to be impacted by what you design. I think that's very crucial when designers are designing today.
Okay. And if a situation comes up where the needs of the business do not match with the needs of consumers, how do you navigate that scenario? And which needs would you give priorities
So
to?
at the very onset, it is important to set certain parameters as what you would say as criteria for going ahead with one design versus the other, right? And we try and align that with our when we work with our clients and customers. Also, consumers don't have all the answers. We start with building around the journey or the design or the experience around the customer, but I would really recommend sometimes rapid prototyping a part of their idea as well. If there is, you're not entirely sure that if this is something that the customer needs, there's no harm in testing and piloting a part of that idea very quickly with a few customers, getting a pulse check of sorts as to what they think and feel of it, and and probably incorporate their feedback in shaping the final design. I think that's one way to really look at what could work. With one of our clients that we're working on, it's really we're saying we're not going to implement all the solutions at one go. So we start with a large picture, but we said, okay, we're going to focus on five things that could make possible impact, and we decide them by testing it out. It's not whether I know whether which is going to work or you know what's going to work. When I mean the agency and you, the client, but it's together. Let's try these five things out very quickly, very rapidly. See what the reaction is, and then see how do you want to tweak it before it gets rolled out into all the other formats.
Interesting. And do you see more and more technology in space soon? Do you believe our interaction with physical spaces is going to reduce, and introduction of augmented reality, virtual reality, or other sophisticated technologies are going to take over?
I feel that these solutions and technologies won't be an isolated solution. They in fact will help enhance physical spaces. So I won't say physical spaces are going to go down because people, I mean, let's look at an example of us sitting in lockdown for almost 2 months. Are we waiting to go out? Yes, we are. Right? How much are you going to be sitting in the same space? But at the same time, what technology will play is a big role in enhancing that physical space. So the way physical spaces will be designed very differently, and we'll interact with them very differently. I won't say they will get reduced, but they will get enhanced through technology.
Okay, that's interesting. And with fields like interior designing, architecture, which are different areas of specialization, how do you think, especially young aspirants, differentiate between the role to enter space design as a career?
I would say just go with what you're passionate about. Always, or, more often than not, you might start with one field of design discipline, but over a course of time, you would become a master of something completely different or something even more specialized within it. So just start with something you're really passionate about, and you discover along the way. There is, because let's say career choices of if someone wanted to be an augmented reality specialist, uh, 10 years ago, if I was thinking that, I would be a master of that, I wouldn't know that, right? Because that didn't exist. So I think you start with something you're passionate about, and you discover along the way.
Great. And from moving to the physical spaces technology, I shared a term with you, designeering, that we coined at Avantika. And it's been interesting to see how this term interplays in every field. What do you think about this concept of designeering, where both design and engineering coming together? And how does it impact your workspace or your
For me,
life?
the term, my takeaway from that term is really the engineering part is really the scientific approach, right? The science behind the madness of sorts, right? um, because I've always been a believer that for any field of design to really work, it's really the process that goes under it, the process that goes behind it. So for me, design engineering is bringing the scientific approach to unlocking potential, and as cliche as it sounds, is really the method to the madness.
Interesting. And that takes us to the last question of ours, which we called as the quickie takeaway segment. We call it Gyan Vyan. So, Manu, I'm going to throw a few questions at you, and we would like to hear your top of the mind answers to them. So, are you
Sure.
ready for this?
Yeah, sure.
That sure had an element of doubt in it. Don't worry, we'll have interesting set of questions into playing. Okay, so Manu, the one place in the world that you would want to be quarantined in.
Quarantined in Kenya with the animals and the wildlife.
Okay, and the best space or exhibition you've ever visited is.
Actually, it's a place that I want to go. Okay, the exhibition. There was the in DC. There was a the Holocaust Museum. Yeah, that was an experience that it was chilling, it's even the memento they give you at the end of it. It actually says there's a badge that says "Remember what you saw," and that is a perfect description of their entire experience in a few words, because you are almost translate or rather transported to a different era and really what happened. So for me, that was a really yeah, the Holocaust Museum in DC.
Interesting. And one movie future tech that you wish to see in the world in reality.
Hey, I wish we could. It's a very old future tech, but beam me up, Scotty. I wish I could teleport myself wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
Okay. And one weird myth about designers that you've heard.
Weird myth about designers. They think they are God's gift to design kind.
Okay. And if you were a part of a bazaar in your firm, who would you be? Would you be a vegetable seller, a mithai shop owner, a franchisee owner, and why?
I'll be the one who brings everyone together.
Okay. Interesting. So the head of the bazaar, the one who ensures that it's set up.
Who ensures better collaboration among between or rather among everyone.
Okay. So your one advice to young aspirant designers.
Get your hands dirty in design. Get to know certain tools that you probably never heard of, and push the thinking. And don't get lazy. It's always easy to use a software to design, but it's lot more rewarding getting your pen and paper and getting great thinking going.
Great. Thank you so much, Manu. This was an exciting conversation, a lot of insights. I think there's a lot for all of us to reflect back and learn from your experiences and your conversation. So, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Thanks, Rohit. Thanks for the opportunity to have this chat, and it was a lovely chat as well.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you follow us on social media Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in with us on our journey, and don't forget to share it with your friends.